Hey guys, welcome back to this new comprehensive tier list of the new format, the Fiendsmith Azamina format. If you're wondering, we have a lot of decks to go through. We are ranking them through the categories best of the best. Only the best decks will end up here. Strong, mid, solid, and then weak. And we will quickly remove this D tier here because otherwise it's just a bit too much. And if you're wondering where there is the Fiendsmith engine here, or the Fiendsmith icon basically, or Azamina, as those are all combination engines basically, I will mention them when I use the decks that can incorporate them and will rank them having the Azamina and the Fiendsmith stuff in mind. But without further ado, let's hop right in. We have Goblin bikers here. Will definitely get its support in the future and will be better then. There will also be better times to play this deck, namely when XYZ decks are very dominant, which they are not at the moment. This deck is still kind of solid, can make an okay board. It's definitely not a weak deck, so I would put it here. Then we have this Infernoid stuff, which I think is very bad. Sometimes it wins through being max seed and then summoning a lot, decking out your opponent, but other than that, I think the game plan of this deck just lacks power. It's not very good going second, so I think this is a deck that you should not get and should probably avoid. Ritual Beast, definitely a deck that was at the top before. I think it is still very strong, though in this format it has been power crept a bit by the other decks. But what you can do right now is you can make the Protoss and then call Dark or call Fire and be pretty safe that you're hitting something great, especially because a lot of people are on Snake Eyes at the moment. So that's not bad for the deck, but in comparison to the other decks that we are going to take a look at, not that great. Still a strong option, which will probably end up at the lower bottom of the strong rank here. So we have Pearly here, which I think is still a strong and a solid, viable XYZ deck. You make this towers, boss, and monster that is pretty hard to out still at this moment. So this is always a good strategy. We will see the same thing with Raid Raptor here, but definitely not something that I would take to the ladder if you want to be super successful. Then again, by the way, I also think that with every deck that we will take a look at here, you can reach Master 1. It's only the question, you will have to grind either less or way more, depending on the deck. Then we have Centurion, which definitely had its strongest point before. Now, in comparison to the other decks, is definitely a bit weaker, but in my opinion, at the moment, stronger than is Ritual Beast. You can also combine this with Fiendsmith stuff. You could also combine this. You could combine this with Azamina stuff if you wanted to, but this doesn't really work together. But you can put in the Fiendsmith cards in here. They will get their support in the future, making it way better. For now, it is a strong option. Then we have heroes here, which have not really received support, but only alternative artworks. I think at the moment it is more on the weak side. I will definitely put it on the top of the weak category. This might be the strongest weak deck. It's not a bad deck by any stretch of the imagination, but going second, it's not that great. And the going first combo is okay. Can definitely do some things. We might end up putting it here in mid-solid. We will have to see. Then we have Bandit, which at the moment I think it had better times. I think it's still a strong deck, but we will have to see where we put it here, where it ranks in comparison to all of the other strong decks. I definitely think it's better than Ritual Beast. Then again, a lot of people are playing Bestials right now, which is not great for Bandit. Then we have Chimera, which you can combine with the Fiendsmith cards, and that is definitely strong. If the deck can go first and build its board, then normally your opponent will not be able to break this. I also think that cards like the Chimera Fusion are very strong since they give you the opportunity to dodge an Imperm or an Effect Veiler. So I think Chimera at the moment, especially combined with the Fiendsmith cards, is very strong, and going first, you will be very successful. This is a very hard going first meta, so if your deck can play, for example, the Azamina engine, you should also play Fuvalos. Fuvalos definitely better in this format than it was in the last. We have Ancient Gear going second deck, which is definitely not bad. This is a mid-solid deck. Tenpai definitely being better. We will take a look at this in a moment here. But as a lot of people are going first right now, you will most likely go second. The question though is, will you have the tools to break through the board, because the boards are very, very strong. So I think it's not the best time to play a pure going second strategy. And if you want to do it, there are better options. Then we have Labyrinth, which I think is still very strong. The engine is just very solid. You can also play Fiendsmith stuff in here if you wanted to. And then you can tech a lot of trap cards in here that are good against the current meta. Labyrinth is a deck that kind of is always nicely positioned because you can switch in any trap that you need for the current meta. I think still a solid option. And if you have it, you can go ahead, play it, throw the Fiendsmith engine in there and make it even better. So Fiendsmith definitely gave a boost to this deck. We have Unchained, which also was boosted by Fiendsmith. Unchained, Fiendsmith we are ranking right here. And I think this is definitely kind of like a strong deck. The board that you can make going first is quite impressive. This Soul of Rage into SP Little Knight combo is always extremely strong. This will probably end up on the weaker side of the strong decks here. Also not that great into Max C or into the Fuvolas, unfortunately. But other than that, what you can do is pretty amazing. And also going second is not the worst deck. Then we have Dinosaurs, which honestly is more on the weak side of the decks that you can play, I think. I mean, if you can resolve this Triceratops guy where your monsters are unaffected, this can be very strong. But all in all, I think there are just better decks. Same goes for Flon Reese here. Flon Reese, definitely not something that you want to play right now. They have received some unhits in the form of the M-Pen going, I think, back to 2. Still, this is not a deck that performs very well. And the Dimension Shifter being at 1 definitely hurts the deck. Then we have Exosister, which the game plan is okay. The game plan is quite solid. I still think this is on the weaker side of decks. I mean, if you can go first and can get your Exosisters online, this can definitely work going second. You can play the evenly matched, which you will probably need more than one evenly match to break through most boards going second. And then once again, this was a deck that definitely was nice because of Shifter being there, but now with Shifter being at 1, it's not that great. And then we have Fire King here, and I think the best version that you can play right here is Fire King Azamina, or you could also play the pure Fire King variant if you see a lot of Bystials, since these fire monsters can obviously not be targeted by Bystials. If you are playing the Azamina Fire King version, then you are a bit weaker to Bystials, but I think all in all the deck is a bit stronger. This is definitely one of the best decks that you can play right now, especially if you play this with Azamina. You will also have the opportunity to play Fuvolas. I mean, you can play Fuvolas in any deck if you want and so desire, but in this one it's actually pretty great. We have this Jandora G anime deck here, which I think is one of the worst decks, might be even worse than Infernoid. I'll put it over Infernoid. I just dislike Infernoid so much. And then we have Sprite here. The time of Sprite has definitely passed. It's not as bad as some of the other decks here, but it's also not something I would go ahead and pick up right now. Same goes for the Light Swan deck right here. If you can hit the, we are talking pure Light Swan here, if you can hit some good mills, then this deck can definitely pop off a bit. But all the decks that I put in front of here, I would choose before I play Light Swan, honestly. Maybe I would even choose Flon Reese over there. I don't know. These decks are both very, very bad. Light Swan, unfortunately, even with the new support, not really that competitive. Then we have Kashtira, which I think is a mid and solid deck, especially because Kashtira Unicorn is so strong. A lot of the extra decks of the strongest decks that we will place up here are very, very tight, and that means that the Unicorn goes very hard, removing Fiendsmith Requiem, removing, I don't know, Fiendsmith Desiree, or also the Azamina Ilvia Silva, Ilya Silva, that's it. The names of the Azamina cards are crazy. So I think Kashtira is actually one of the better decks. You can play it as a control-ish, floodgate-ish variant, maybe with Dimension Fishers. Out of all of these decks here in the mid-solid category, I think Kashtira might be the best one. Now that I talk about this, I think that Kashtira might even be better than Unchained, if I have to be honest. So maybe we even put this above this, or we might have to put Unchained a little bit down. Let's put Unchained a little bit down. I think this is more correct. We have Marincess, which, yeah, if they can establish the import, it's not that bad. I think it's somewhere here in the weak category, but at the top, I have to say. And then we have White Forest in combination with Azamina here, and this is an interesting one. I'm not sure that I want to put it in best of the best category. I think I want to put it very high up in the strong category. They don't have these amazing one-card combos, especially because they nearly always need something to discard, but obviously having the AZ Azamina is super nice, giving you the ability to bridge from the White Forest engine into your Azamina engine, Azamina giving this deck the Omni Negate. Then you can also play Azamina heavier version, so if you want to play Azamina as an engine, and if you want to play it at full power, so to say, then White Forest is definitely the deck to do it in. This will get even more support in the future, so a good investment. I've talked about this in my investment tier list. You can also go check that out. White Forest, very strong here, but not one of the best decks in my opinion. Then we have Mathmech, still extremely strong. I will put this over Centurion in my opinion. Definitely needed circular hits way back. but it's still unhit. I think at the latest point when we will receive the Menace archetype, we will see something happening to Circular. Otherwise, I think the combination of these engines might be a bit too strong. So I think this is the latest point at which we will see some hits. But other than that, Mathmech is basically unhit from the beginning. We have the diameter at 1, sure. This is not great, but also not that big of a problem. We unfortunately did not receive the support for Memento. Now you can put Fiendsmith in here, making the combo lines a bit better, but we are definitely missing the last support for this, which is why I think at the moment this is more of a mid-solid deck together with the Fiendsmith engine, but this definitely will be better once we finally get the remaining support cards. I have speculated they will come in the next pack. If you have not seen my speculations, you're going to go check that out in one of the latest videos. It's in the top right corner. We have Ragnara here, and this I am using for, let me quickly check, this was my Ragnara Rika stuff, right? So this is not Ragnara since there is no pure variant, but this is Ragnara Rika. If you can go first and can be uninterrupted, it is extremely strong and extremely strong deck, but other decks are also, and then going second, it's unfortunately not that great, which makes it worse than the decks we will place up top here. They can definitely, or the deck can definitely be on pace with the going first spot of the decks we are putting on top here, but going second is so much worse that I can't really put it higher than here in the mid-solid category. I think this belongs over Unchained, honest. I think it belongs under Unchained. Kashtira definitely still being my favorite, but a bit over Memento, at least until we have the support cards. Red Raptor, they can at least make this boss tower monster, which is why I would place them somewhere here in the Pearly region, definitely behind Pearly in my opinion, because this is the better I make a boss monster that can't be outed deck. We have Rescue Ace that you can also play with the Fiendsmith stuff if you want to. There's space in your Exo deck for sure. And the cool thing is that it can't really be hindered by Bestials. I mean, it can obviously if you play the Fiendsmith stuff. But other than that, I think this is not in the worst position. It also is very good into the Fuvalos, since you basically only need to get your Turbulence online and then set your traps to interrupt your opponent. So I think this is actually quite a solid deck. And I would place this here over Unchained. We have Salamangreat, once again a deck not really hindered by Bestials. That is quite nice, but against Fuvalos, against Maxis, not that great. Playing into a board going second, not great. And then the board that this makes going first, I think is just oftentimes not enough to stop the best of the best decks that we have on top here. So I, unfortunately, even though I like the deck, have to put it down here in the mid-solid category at the bottom. Then we have this Archfiend, Red Dragon Archfiend stuff. I think this is more of a weak deck. I wouldn't say it's weaker than Heroes, so I will put it here. We have Dark World Vintage. Now I have this silver stuff here. If you can go first and establish these silver handlock combinations, then you can definitely just win the game. But going second, this deck isn't it. So one of the weaker decks and a bit inconsistent. Also very weak to draw on Lockboard, which a lot of people are playing right now. So I would not go for this. We have Voices Voice, unfortunately bad into the Bestials, very bad into the Bestials. And now is getting power crept slowly but surely. It's still not a bad deck. And I would put it somewhere here at the bottom of the strong category, since the plays it can make, they are still quite good, and it is a good deck into the Fuvalos as well into Maxi, which is why this will always be kind of a good deck. We have Drytron, they have just received their support, and I think this makes it kind of a mid-solid deck, but more to the bottom here, I would place it over Goblin Bikers, but definitely not something to write home about. We have Sky Striker, I have already mentioned going second isn't that great, and Sky Striker, in my opinion, is just not strong enough. I would combine this with Tenpai Dragon and other going second engines, then it can definitely work. A little Sky Striker package, but if we are talking pure Sky Striker, I think this is more of a mid-solid option. I think I would maybe place this. I would place this over Ancient Gear, honestly, but it's just not the greatest time for going second decks. And then we have Snake Eyes, or you could say Snake Eyes Fiendsmith Azamina, which is definitely the strongest version. You don't need to play it with the Azamina stuff, but it's just that good. It's even better than the Fiendsmith stuff in my opinion. And I think this might be the best deck. We will take a look at the other ones we were placing up here in a second, but yeah, this is just the deck to beat at the moment. The Snake Eyes Fiendsmith Azamina deck, super consistent, extremely good going first capabilities, still going second very strong. Not as strong going second as the Fire King stuff, they can still play the Raging Phoenix Galantis combo. You can also play it here if you want to, but the space in your Exo deck is definitely very tight. I think Yubel is also one of the bests, but definitely at the bottom. It is just a bit weaker, less consistent, and then can be stopped more easily, in my opinion. Also does not have access to the Azamina engine, which is just insanely strong. 6 Samurai, super heavy Samurai here. I don't know, this deck is I mean it can still combo quite well, and if you can, I guess if you can get the entire combo through, this can still be quite strong and end up on a lot, but can also be stopped quite easily. Definitely has received too much hits in order to be super competitive. Dragonlink, having the ability to play the Bestials, also not that bad. Ruin Lockbird, not a great card for Dragonlink, not the best times for Dragonlink, but definitely not a bad option. I would put it somewhere here in the mid-solid category. Honestly, if you can go onto your end boss monster, which is basically also a towers monster, that is definitely not bad. Sword Soul, still kind of like a solid deck, but more to the bottom here. There are definitely better decks. This is now no longer the deck that beginners can get. Beginners can now get branded, which is better in my opinion. But Sword Soul is definitely not a bad option, especially if you're on the lower ranks. You can just go ahead, play Sword Soul, and be kind of successful with it. We have Telements combination with Fiendsmith here also possible, definitely making the deck a bit better now. Still a mid-solid option, which I think has a higher ceiling than all of those decks. I will place it somewhere here if you're playing the Fiendsmith engine. Then we have Tenpai, which in its pure form is definitely weaker than it was before. You can combine this with Fiendsmith, with Sky Striker. There are definitely a lot of cards that you can put in here. It's very nice that this deck can play Fuvolos and Purulia. This is definitely the strongest going second deck, and still a strong option in my opinion. You can still dominate games with this. It's pretty tough to rank. I honestly, this might seem a bit crazy, but I would put it here under the Azamina White Forest deck. I think this is still one of the best decks in the game, even though we have the Sengenkaimen at 2 now. And then we have the Exodia deck, which is actually kind of strong going first. It's pretty hard to break this going first board, because an entire board clear is quite effective, and also this being a spell Trap Negate, it can play a lot of Floodgates, Dimension Fisher, and stuff like that. There can be only one. So honestly, I think this is a strong option, even though this is more at the bottom here of the strong category. I will put it somewhere here under Labyrinth. Then we have Traptrix, the worst trap deck in comparison to Labyrinth, which I would put at the bottom of the mid-solid category. We have Vanquished Soul. They had this Dimension Shifter going on. Now they don't have it any longer. They don't have the most impressive going first board. It's more like a grind game deck, and I think it's not the best time for grind game decks. So honestly, I would say this is just worse than all of the other decks I placed here. Then we have Vanadium. Vanadium's time is definitely over. Not solid enough, not consistent enough, and the end board isn't strong enough, but this is still better than something like, for example, Sword Soul, in my opinion. We have Ashen, which is definitely a weak deck. The question is, how weak is it? I think this is one of the weakest decks that you can play right now. I mean, the board clear play isn't that bad, so let's be fair. The board clear play isn't all that bad. So I guess I would place it somewhere here between Dark World and the Super Heavy Samurai. And then we have Melodious, which I think is still a strong option, even though I would place it at the bottom of the tier list here. Maybe over Melodious, over Voiceless Voice, but definitely not higher. So we have the best decks here with Snake Eyes Fiend Azamina being the best one, and then Fire King Azamina, the second best one, and the Yubel deck being the third best. These are the best decks, the decks to beat. And then shortly after that, we have decks like White Forest Azamina, Tenpai Dragon, Mathmech, and Centurion, and then it falls down a bit from here, which these decks are still strong. These are solid mid options, and these are decks you should probably not really play. But now I'm very interested in your opinion. What do you think of my tier list? Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Let me know in the comments. If you like my videos, please consider subscribing, hitting a thumbs up and the notification bell. And guys, we will see each other in the next one.